Hey everyone, my name is Todd Blyleven, and we are seconds away from I'm Going In Starting Up. It's the newest podcast sharing stories of adversity, strength, and love from some amazing guests. Here's a little background on me. I was a professional baseball player. I was a Major League Baseball scout. I'm a dad. I'm a sports technology owner, and I was in a mass shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada on October 1st, 2017, where I chose to go back in after getting my family out to help others that were in need get out to safety. And it's been extremely challenging. So the trauma that was once behind me in my head and the headaches and everything else, through peer support, people sharing their relatable stories, being brave and courageous to help me stand back up for myself and be mentally strong, the therapy and the journey that I took to get to where I am today, to be able to share these stories on top of being able to help anybody that's been knocked down with trauma. You do not have to have PTSD to be a fan of this show. It's trauma. We've all dealt with things. So I'm really excited to be able to share these stories of these brave people that have said, I'm going in. I'm going into therapy. I'm going in to help someone. I'm going into church. I'm going in to better myself every day. That's what we're going to talk about. I'm really excited. So here we go. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Bernie, thank you so much for joining to the show. I'm going in. I'm super excited. You're my first guest.
I'm
So,
honored.
yeah, thanks, brother. We got a chance to meet up in Connecticut, and I was so blessed to have been able to give a keynote speech in front of so many honored guests. And you were to my left. And Deputy Fire Chief Bernie Meehan is our first guest on I'm Going In. I'm really excited. And I thought maybe I'd just give a brief overview of who you are a little bit. I know you've been an EMT since you were 16 years old. You're a volunteer firefighter since 16, which is incredible. You became a paramedic at age 21, one of the earliest in the state of Connecticut. And now you're a deputy fire chief, and also a volunteer within your hometown. But why fire? Like, why'd you jump into becoming a firefighter? Where did that come from? And then talk about like where your career kind of took you up to today.
Well, that's a great question, Todd. I just wanted to say you were fantastic in New Canaan, Connecticut, larger than life, and you really moved the whole crowd there, which was all mental health people and first responders. So thank you for that. I am so honored to have met you there.
Thank you.
Uh, so that's a great question. It caught me off guard. What I wasn't thinking you're going to ask that, but it's an interesting question. My grandmother's brother was killed in a fire in New York City as a firefighter
Hmm.
when he was younger. And when I was a little boy, I would hear the stories about how your great uncle had an inspector's funeral and he was a hook and ladder man and all that sort of thing. He died on a roof of a burning building.
Wow.
So then it stuck with me from a very young age. And then we had a weekend house in Connecticut and in Newtown, where Sandy Hook is. And one night I was very small. We were going to Connecticut. And there was a tenement on fire. My father stopped and ran in and got people out. He wasn't a fireman, the Marine. And
Hmm.
that stuck with me too. And then when I was about 14, I was able to take like a junior EMT thing through the Explorer post. And then I joined the volunteer fire department in Newtown. And once, as they say, once you start doing it, the needle's stuck in your arm and you're addicted, So um,
Hmm.
that's where it was, and that's it's crazy. It seemed like I could remember walking in that firehouse in Newtown, when I was 15 and a half or whatever it was, and it seemed like it was yesterday, and now it's here we are, 40 some odd years later. So it's I think most people would tell you the same story.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. Number one, that you come from such a line of heroes, and I like to call them heroes because they go over and above the call of duty and react in that moment, where your dad's, a Marine and embedded in you and trained to go towards the danger. However, there's always a choice that you have, right?
Typically, yeah. Sometimes there's a choice. I mean, my dad was actually wounded in Korea, so I don't know if there's a
Wow.
choice there. You're just told what to do. Um,
Yeah.
but but I think as you move on, especially in a career, emergency services, fire, police, EMS, the choices are diminished. In my little hometown, it's very small. We're volunteers. The thing goes off. I don't necessarily have to go, but if I'm at work, and the thing goes off, as your show says, we're going in. There is no question. It's your duty, it's your job, it's your calling, your vocation. So I interesting topic.
You when I met you, one of the first things you had told me that your favorite saying is chaos is my comfort zone. It seems like with just the lineage that you come from, it seems like that has kind of bled through you in your family members, just being attracted to that, but being probably in the right spot at the right time.
Or the wrong spot at the right time.
The
Um,
wrong spot.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, the chaos thing. I've always been called Captain Chaos and all these other things as life went on, um, as my career went on. But after the Sandy Hook thing, which I know we'll get into, I was on a little bit of a journey that we'll get into, the resilience part, and I got hooked up with a minister who had done some time in Rwanda and during the genocide and all that. And he was very profound, brilliant gentleman. And we got talking, and it was as early on in my journey after Sandy Hook. And he said, "Bernie, your comfort zone is chaos. That's your issue." And he was right. It was profound. It was an epiphany. And now I kind of like that. And like I said it to you. It's where my comfort zone is. And we fix chaos. It's not as though we want to maintain chaos, but when you've been doing it as long as I have, and the depth that I've done it, and now my job in the fire service incident command is bringing calm from chaos. So I'm very good at the chaos, and plus I'm very ADD, ADHD, whatever you want to call it, so I can multitask a bunch of things at once. So as an incident commander, that is actually a blessing, if you will, so that I can listen to 4 radios on my shoulders and watch 25 guys and split things up into groups of 5. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting thought if you think about it. Most of these first responders revel in the chaos. They just haven't figured that out yet.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Now you have obviously um, been in two notable uh tragedies. One being where it was, you spent 4 nights at the Bridgeport El Ambiance Plaza, where that collapsed in 1987, which killed 28 construction workers. Can you talk about that event, what took place there? And, one of the main purposes of this show is to really highlight the feeling of going in when you're defying the odds, you're facing the fear, even though you're in this line of duty, it's who you are, it's who you were trained to be. What did you feel in that moment when you're, now going in to this horrific ordeal?
Again, a great question, great way you put things. I love your perspective of things. I was much younger than I am now, and there weren't a lot of paramedics back then, and so it was in one of the, we've had some watershed events across the country, across New England, Connecticut. That was one for a building collapse, a construction accident. It changed all the building codes. You couldn't do the lift slab things anymore. So this building under construction collapses in Bridgeport, and it's just a big pile of rubble. Something you'd seen an earthquake, which we don't get in Connecticut. A building burns down, there's nothing left or whatever. So I got I worked in the next town over in Fairfield as a paramedic, and which is very close to where this is. And as that day went on, I wasn't there the first day, but like no one really knew what to do. And it's Jonathan Best, who passed away a few years ago, who was one of my early heroes, was a New York City paramedic, and then went on to be the Bridgeport emergency management director. He kind of, this was before there were USAR teams and things like that, but we had a bunch of us that had been done some training and so forth, and some of us were paramedics, and he called that group in to be his little incident command operations team, if you will. So the paramedics, because of who we were and our level of experience, which really wasn't that much back then, but it was more than anybody else, we wound up being in the pile, trying to recover what was left of these people. We had people coming from Miami and FDNY and all these places with all their high-tech tools to try to, and they had determined fairly early on there were no survivors. This thing just pancaked down, just 13, I think it was 12 stories of concrete. So the pile's 40, 50 feet high of just concrete. And my recently retired from the Stanford Fire Department, my partner at the time, he was a captain in Stanford, just retired. We were both paramedic partners, and we were there. And there was a moment there where I kind of looked at him and he looked at me, and there was just cranes carrying tons and tons of debris over our heads and everything. And I just, what are we doing? And he was like, I'm not really sure. And there was thousands of responders at this event, but the few paramedics and a couple of troopers and firefighters from Bridgeport and so forth were really in the middle of this pile, and they'd find what, and, not to get gory or anything, but what was left of these people that got squashed, and the paramedics would have to remove them, and it was pretty horrifying, because there really wasn't much left of them. And later on, I asked this Jonathan Best, who again, passed away a few years ago, but had much more experience than me. He had been a New York City paramedic and all that. And I said, why did you send us in there? And he said, so you guys are at the top of your career. Somebody will have to replace you if this wears you out. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty profound. I'm fairly young.
Wow.
I'm a fairly new paramedic, and I've been written off already. But it didn't write us off. And from that, if you want me to keep going,
please.
That was in April. So then in November, they ran some debriefings, if you will. No one knew what that meant back then. The Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Everly came up from Maryland to run these debriefings. And of the something like 3,000 or 4,000 responders, construction workers, all sorts of people, I think like 2 people showed up. One was not me. So that was an epic failure. And I remember being in the midst of this pile. The only thing, somebody had the idea then, and this is a long time ago, this is 40 years ago almost, to have some mental health addressed there. And the first one I saw was a guy in kind of a suit and tie, and he had a hard hat on, and he had a walnut, a peanut taped to his hard hat, and it said "sight shrink." And I'm like, okay, and I was young and not into this yet, and I'm like, okay, get this guy away from me. I want nothing to do with this guy. This is insane. And then the next night, a woman showed up like in a dress with a hard hat on, sight shrink. And I said to one of there was Bridgeport SWAT guys protecting us. I said, just get her out of here. Just get her away from me. So I didn't have a great taste for mental health care back then. We didn't do it back then. It's just you'd either made it or you didn't. You just said, okay, this isn't for me. So then in November of that year, Dr. Mitchell came up to Yale and was going to do this CISD program to train the trainers and all that. And I'm like, well, I got nothing to do. I'll take the class. And it was very profound to me. Dr. Mitchell and I are still friends. And he's not unlike me. He shows up at chaos and everything. He was a firefighter, paramedic, and all those sort of things. And from that little class at Yale in 1987, we developed the Connecticut Critical Incident Stress Team, and with a 12 or so really, really highly talented, caring people. Some of them have passed on by now, but we were the first team in New England. Connecticut CISD team, and we hit the ground running. And I wound up, I mean, since then, it's a long time, but I've probably done over 400 CISD or stress call outs now, whatever you want to call them now. But I went everywhere from Burlington, Vermont to Virginia to all over the place for classes, for call outs. We would get calls for, there's a Orange County, New York, somebody died out there, and can the Connecticut team go out there? And I'm like, it's 3 hours from my house, but there's no one else to go. Okay, so a few of us would drive out. I can remember when the Gulf War started.
Mhm.
I remember being way upstate New York somewhere, doing a debriefing for a firefighter that had died, and it was funny how I remember things. I remember, we bombed Baghdad, and I'm like, okay, here I am in God's country, upstate in the Adirondack somewhere. Thank God somebody else was with me to drive us both home. But
Wow.
and since then it's all grown. And
What?
there's multiple teams everywhere you go now.
Well, so there you are. I mean, you go through this horrific tragedy with the construction workers, and then people are the first signs of kind of mental health being maybe even introduced into the first responder community at some point, right around
Right.
that time, and to have that kind of suppress, like, no, I don't need to talk to anybody, get away, because that's the mentality that we all grew up with.
Mhm.
But what made you so excited though to join? Was it's Dr. Jeff, basically, um, Dr. Jeff Mitchell. What got you, like, what turned it around where you were like excited now to go into this and become part of this and create this critical incident stress like debriefing piece?
Fair question. Dr. Mitchell, Jeff, definitely had a big part of it because like you, we instantly connected,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you don't always, I meet a ton of people in my life, so do you, and some people stick out.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a big thing. And then I went, I was all in. So I went to all these different training programs, and we wound up at one. We were in Baltimore, and he had all these people from all these disasters come in and speak about their experiences. And this was firsthand. I was a New York City cop. I was shot in the chest. They cut my chest open at Bellevue, and this is the guy telling a story, and all things like that. And it it was kind of, I don't even know what the word I would use, but there was about a dozen of us from Connecticut down there, and what happened was it kind of, we detoxed ourselves in real time, talking about the things we'd been through, not just the
Mhm.
building collapse in Bridgeport, but I had been
Yeah.
to fires where firefighters had been killed, and countless accidents and shootings and suicides, and at that point, which is again a long time ago. So I said, this whole process is a big grief factory, but we detoxed ourselves, and we realized that, um, wow, everybody goes through this. And then, being how I am, I'm pretty open, gregarious. I don't know what the word
Yeah.
really is, but
Yeah.
when we would start to do these debriefings, and it was all brand new, and we'd be in these firehouse. Well, the first couple debriefings we did in Connecticut were really clandestine. Somebody would call and say, "Hey, I think we need to do something. We had a real bad call, and somebody got killed, or one of our people killed themselves." So I remember one of the first ones I did was in a shooting range in a police station. Another one's in a town hall, like after midnight. Another one's in a fire station basement in the middle of the night. And what would happen would be the guy would, I'd get the senior guy come over to me, firefighter, let's say, and he'd go, "Hey, look, dude, I'm okay with this, but some of these younger guys, you know how they are, but I'm not going to go in there." And I was like, "Well, you know what? We need you to go in there because you're the guy that's going to be here when I leave, and can talk to these kids." Well, we'd get, and again, this is in the 80s, maybe early 90s. So there was a lot of, you know, the senior guys then had been in Vietnam. So
Yeah.
they would start talking, this reminds me of Vietnam. And I'm like, oh my God, this is really going to a deep place.
Yeah.
And when you get talking to these people, everybody had a load of crap in their bucket.
Yeah.
Everybody. But no one knew how to dump it. And the problem back then, as opposed to now, which
Mm.
is very exciting now, is we had no mental health workers. I think we had one psychologist or psychiatrist in Connecticut that was what they say now is trauma informed. Well, this guy couldn't see everybody, nor would anybody go to a psychiatrist in
Yeah.
1988 or
Yeah.
1990. So now the difference, so I would do these debriefings that our mental health workers today would curl their hair because we didn't have a mental health professional with us, and we were debriefing people. I've probably done it. I stopped really keeping count, but probably about 40 line of duty deaths and
Mm.
countless suicides, public safety suicides. And these were really heavy things. And I think personally, when I would go listen to these people's experiences, it kind of humbled me. I'm like, oh, okay, these guys are still working and they're still standing and they're still doing it. They're still going in. And
Yeah.
so it kind of humbles yourself. Like if they can do it, I'm pretty sure I can do it. And which, we'll get into, but that
Yeah.
was put to the test, in Sandy Hook, for at least
Yeah.
personally. But, it it's just it's been an interesting journey. And then you meet people like you and I bonded instantly
Mm.
because we're trauma buddies.
Yeah.
You went through a trauma, I've been through a trauma, and like, oh, this guy gets it. And just before I got on with you, I was chatting with one of my best friends, fire officer in a different city, and I was telling him about you, and he goes, well, what does he know about this? Typical skeptical
Hmm.
firefighter. I said, well, he was at the Vegas thing and he carried a lot of people out. He became one of us. Oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, okay, he gets it. You know, and it's such a sick club to belong to.
Yeah.
But once you're in there, you're like, okay, I'm certainly not the only member of this club. And that's even going back to the early days in Baltimore and Linthicum, Maryland, and wherever the hell else we went back
Mhm.
then. The people like you and me existed, but they weren't on the talk circuit necessarily. Jeff Mitchell
Right.
knew who they were. It's just now it's every other day there's another one of these incidents. But I had met the people way back. It had to be late 80s, I guess, in Palm Bay, Florida. There was a crazy shooting there, which they didn't call it active shooter back then, but we met
Yeah.
those cops in the training. But it's
Yeah.
like I said, it's an interesting journey.
It's amazing, um when I got back from Las Vegas, I tell the story how I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to think. There I was, 8 hours carrying people out, losing lives in my hands. And it was a gentleman that had done time, over in overseas and 3 year, combat vet. And hey, I've got this relatable story. And he was courageous enough in my mind. I call it courage, where he kind of broke that silence, like you've described, and he made himself vulnerable and told me what his story was and where he thought I was mentally, and helped me kind of understand where I was going to go in the next 72 hours. And
Yeah, that when you
it's like an
said that
instant
you
club.
used that term in New Canaan, relatable story. I think it was like the
Yeah.
first time I'd actually heard that. And
Mm.
again, it was like somebody banged me in the back of the head with a ball peen hammer. Oh, oh, yeah, yeah, and I love that term, relatable story. And there was another like you never know who you're talking to, and don't discount that person that they can't necessarily relate to what you've experienced.
That's
I was
right.
at a couple of years ago. We were at a training with the Homeland Security people out on Plum Island out here in the Long Island Sound, and me and one of the other firefighters went. It was pretty heavy. We went out. There's like a reflection garden out there, and this place is
Mm.
super top secret. You're not allowed to take pictures, do anything. And a guy walked out to talk to us, and he was, no one's in uniform, no one knows who anybody is, and so he started talking to us, and I don't know who he is, and he starts relating to us that he spent time in Jonestown, Guyana, when after the incident there, and I was like, oh my God, and talk about relatable stories. Okay, what I went through is not comparable. You saw 900 dead people,
Yeah.
but it's relatable. That
Yeah.
guy is there for a similar reason that brought you there, or brought me and you together. Other
Yeah.
Without tragedy and trauma, you and I wouldn't be friends, which
Well,
in and of
you never
itself is
know.
tragic.
Yeah.
I'm no
That,
longer a baseball fan. I would have, I knew who your dad was,
yeah.
but but it's the relatable story,
Yeah.
title that you bring up is just profound to me. It's just profound.
Thank you. Yeah, it is though. It that's what I noticed too is, I come from a line of military in my background with my family, and all my best friends are first responders or homeland security, like everybody. And when all of a sudden I started opening up and they were sharing their stories, I started learning more about them in that 3 minutes of time where they're saying, hey, I know where you're going. This is what happened with me. And it was like, even though we were friends before, it was like this bond.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing ever I could ever say that would ever embarrass myself or anything else to these people, to yourself. I
Right.
feel like I could tell you anything because I've unlocked the most precious
Right.
hidden area of my entire existence, and we share that same thought and feeling regardless of whatever experience it had.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's very true. When you do, like I said, I've done hundreds of these debriefings, defusings, whatever you want to call them. And at some of the real heavy ones, people, the toughest people you've ever met, break
Yeah.
down and cry for a moment or a second or whatever. And
Yeah.
I was at one not long ago where a really experienced, very respected fire officer and it wasn't even a death one. It was just a very hazardous thing. Cried for a second, and everybody in the room was like, "It's okay," and then other people start to cry, you know, and then you're like, "Okay, let's get this back together. Let's put it, get it
Yeah.
back in perspective," and you're like, "Okay, it's okay." I wasn't born with a Halligan bar in my hand. I was
Mhm.
born the same as you, wet and naked, and you
Yeah.
became a baseball player, and I became a fireman.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and that's the path you take. But then you wind up with these relatable experiences, and it's okay. We'll probably get into it a
Yeah.
little bit, but when
Yeah.
you just said I didn't know what to do, what to say, blah 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 after your incident, um, that really happened to me as well after Sandy Hook. The
Yeah.
cup, as I was trying to get out of the firehouse that night, and then the next
Well,
couple of days, I was
let's talk about it.
lost. Okay,
Let's
let's
talk
talk
about
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
Let's try.
I want to introduce it first because obviously, 2012, we had that tragedy at the Sandy Hook school, and you were one of a team of three paramedics who arrived on scene early. Um, I want you to, as comfortable as you can be,
Okay,
talk about things
okay,
and go into that moment because you were getting ready to really touch. I want to hear the aftermath.
okay.
We,
Yeah. So again, this is another watershed moment for the state of Connecticut.
yeah,
There had been shootings elsewhere, Columbine, and I had even talked to some of those people,
yeah,
from Colorado at some training sessions and so forth. So I had a pretty good idea, what occurred at those things, but again, not relatable. Hadn't experienced it.
yeah,
Um, so it was a nice day that morning, and Sandy Hook. I don't live in Newtown anymore. I live 2 towns north through the woods from Sandy Hook, but it's very close. It's a 10-minute ride. And I heard, I listened, I monitor state police on their radio system, and there was a lot of carrying on, a lot of screaming. I knew there was something going on, but I wasn't sure what. But it was really chaotic, and they were screaming for EMS and everything, which was odd because the state police here are very, very good. They're usually very calm and collected and they, get the job done. So I called the medic supervisor from where I work, and I said, "You listen to this?" He was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "There's something bad going on. Sounds like a shooting in Sandy Hook, but I don't." He goes, "We haven't heard anything." I said, "Well, you need to head that way because they're screaming for help, and I don't think anyone understands what's going on. The dispatchers, I don't think, are really getting the picture. And the town is fairly small. There's like 2 ambulances, volunteer ambulances staffed, and they wheeled in, grabbed a victim each from down the street. The school is kind of odd. It's behind the Sandy Hook firehouse, so it's
Mm.
a long drive. Most schools right in a main drag. This is kind of up in the back lot. And again, I grew up there. I was a member of the fire department in Newtown, and everybody in Sandy Hook Fire Department is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
So I headed that way. There's always the argument: do you self-deploy? Well, you know what? If you're in your yard and you're watching your neighbor struggle putting up the ladder to hang the Christmas lights, you run over and help them.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I I I
Yeah.
I leaned forward, and the the guy I talked to on the phone grabbed his next in line, and they went that way too as they were getting called. So, but I got there real early, and again, the firehouse is in front of the school. And when a kid he's not a kid anymore, but we grew up as kids. He was directing traffic in front of the school. And I'm like, well, and it didn't look like much was going on, like, other than people running away from the school. I go, is this a drill or something? He's like, no, it's not a drill. It's for real. You park your car and get in there and help. Like, okay. So there were some guys behind the firehouse trying to set up some stuff, which is still, it's probably 600, 700 feet up to the school up in the backyard. So it was like, I was kind of behind a firehouse, and another guy was kind of the gatekeeper by the driveway. And he knows me. He starts yelling, "Hey, Bernie, get over here." And I'm like, "What do you need?" He's like, "Oh, they need paramedics up there." Now, I wasn't much of a paramedic at the moment. I had a coat on and a couple of rubber gloves, and the other guys had pulled up, the other two medics, and they had response vehicles. So I went over to them and I'm like, "What are we doing?" They're like, "I don't know. They need us up there. Let's go." So we went up the driveway, and again, people were kids, everybody running away. And I mean, it's fairly early on. And so it was, and like, when you, when you do this job, there are calls where do you do or do you don't? Do you, back then it was, do you stage for the police to control the scene, or do you rush in, which we now call rescue task forces, which has happened after Columbine, because
Hmm.
the teacher died and they're waiting for rescue. But we hadn't done this yet. We didn't train.
Yeah.
We hadn't discussed it.
Yeah.
So here we are, the three of us with minimal gear, hunkered down behind a car in the front yard of the school. And again, absolute utter chaos, live scene. And another guy, since I know it's Connecticut's not a big state. I know pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
And these two guys I'm with know a lot of people. And a state police supervisor sergeant runs over to us with his gun drawn and says, "You three, let's go, follow me." Or, as your show says, we're going in. And I'm like, whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, WTF, what are we doing here? And they got up and off we run. Um,
Wow.
and again, we had no idea what's going on, but you have total faith, in this world, you have total faith in your fellow responders.
Hmm.
Um, the city I work in, the fire, police, EMS, we're different agencies, but we're one team.
That's
There's
right.
there's
Yeah.
never a question of trust or those sort of things. Same with the state troopers where I live. We're covered by state troopers. We work with them on the highway where I work every night, so I know them. And so we stormed the school with a couple of troopers and a couple of Newtown law enforcement guys. So, not to get into the gross details, but we went through the door, and we had some heavily armed law enforcement. There was only a handful of it. There's maybe 6, 10 of them, and the three of us, and we had no idea what we're up against. And so,
Wow.
we moved deeper into the school, and pretty much everybody knows what we found. We found, you know,
Yeah.
uh, a pile of victims that a bunch of them that were not salvageable. We couldn't save them. No one could have saved them. It wouldn't have mattered. So, but if there had been a chance, we would have given it to them,
Yeah.
because we didn't wait like they did in other places.
Yeah.
We ran
You
into
went
that
right
school.
in.
Yeah, the local EMS had been overwhelmed. There was no one left.
Yeah.
There's just the three of us. As time went on, more showed up from all over the place, but they stayed down by the firehouse, because there was nothing to do. And it was sad because rescuers are trained to rescue, and medics are trained to save lives. But there was, I've been a paramedic for a very, very long time by now. This is 10 years ago, so I've been a paramedic for 30 years. And all the king's horses wasn't going to matter.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't because of time. It was how they were, they were murdered.
Yeah.
Um, and so we wound up, staying in the school. The medic supervisor called the medical control and said, okay, you guys stay in there, and go through all the victims. And it it probably didn't have to be done, but we did. We gave everybody got the benefit of the doubt. But there was no saving anybody.
Yeah. No
um
way.
and it was, this was the second, like, time in my career. I don't want to experience the third time, but the three of us went in there, and there were people that were, questioning why didn't they let more EMTs and so forth in there, and because there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
And if not so much there's nothing to do, but why would you subject anyone else to what occurred in there? So again, I felt somewhat disposable or expendable. That, okay, this is real. I mean, I've seen some really bad things. This was off the scale.
Yeah.
I hate the question. To this day, we're now, 11 years later. No one has ever asked me, thank God, so what did you really see? Except for
Oh,
the
geez.
state police investigators.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so, and it's, it was uncomfortable, but it's not anymore, I guess, when somebody says, they say, what do you do? Oh, I'm a fireman, paramedic. Oh, you see some stuff. What's the worst thing you've seen?
Yeah.
Please don't ask that
Right.
question,
Yeah.
because I can't tell you, and nor can you deal with it. you know but so we stayed in there for something like 7 hours. It was a total nightmare. We were, another crazy moment in there was we were in the little, this is elementary school. These are little kids. So
Yeah.
we were kind of holed up. They didn't know what to do with us, because now what are we? Are we witnesses? Are we paramedics? Are we, standing by in case somebody else has a problem in there? The SWAT team came in long after we were in there to search the building, and state police SWAT team. So, we're in there checking on victims, and all of a sudden a SWAT team comes popping through the door, and I'm like, okay, hi guys. Um,
That's crazy.
and but that's how it is in these
I know
towns.
exactly how it
Yeah,
is.
you know,
Yeah.
so
I got a
so
story for that.
yeah, so we're sitting in this little room in these little chairs, and I don't have kids. The only time I spend in a school is when the fire alarm goes off, or we go and do lunches with them with school days for the fire department. So
Yeah.
we're sitting in these little chairs, and all of a sudden we hear some yelling. There was only one state police guy with us in the building, and an FBI guy. And I had just gone into the office to make some copies of our little triage tags, and they found a teacher or a teacher's aide and a nurse hiding in a closet. And this is after, like, they had searched the building, and the one they surprised, there's two women, they surprised the one trooper with us, and it scared the crap out of all of us, because if these
Yeah.
two ladies were holed up somewhere, um are there other people hiding? Are there other
Yeah.
attackers or whatever? So the SWAT team came back in and got yelled at by the state police supervisor, and they turned over every pot and pan in the building from that point forward. But you know, we to this day, if I have a lasting physical reaction, this is the first time anybody's heard this, so those
Mm.
of my friends can laugh later. If I go to a elementary school for an alarm or whatever, and I find myself in those like kindergarten, first grade rooms with those teeny weeny little chairs that I had to sit in for hours, I instantly get goosebumps and so forth. I got to get out of this. Somebody get me out of this
Yeah.
room. I can't sit in this room.
Yeah.
But that's one of my like lasting effects of that experience.
Yeah.
That. So I know some people, like we talked to other people from other events when we were going down a hall, we were kicking uh shell casings out of the way, because they were
Hmm.
all over the place. So that's another thing people relate to,
Yeah.
that this was not the event you were at was a gunman way far away with powerful weapons. This was up close and personal.
Yeah.
This was a very different event. But
Yeah.
we finally, so it's now like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. At one point, the FBI was relaying information to the White House next to us of what was going on, and we had to make sure the victim count was spot on, in the school. So the three of us were responsible for that, which was something they don't teach you.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
so then they said, okay, we're going to let you go. But we had no idea what was going on outside of that school for so long. We didn't we were kind of in a vacuum. We hadn't used our phones. We hadn't heard we didn't even have radios with us. And, we came out, there was news helicopters, like,
Yeah.
5 or 6 of them buzzing overhead. And the firehouse is right down the end of the street again. So, in my experience, training, personality, whatever you want to call it, the firehouse is your sanctum. So one of the guys I work with in Danbury, was a volunteer there. So he was standing there. He says, hey chief, what do you need? I said, get me out of here.
Yeah.
So now by the time we got out, there's 400 cars blocking in the whole neighborhood, mostly state police cars and stuff. Like there's 250 state troopers on the scene. So we got to the firehouse, and what I didn't know, neither did the guy I was with or the other two, that the governor was in the firehouse and had just let all the parents know that
Oh.
there's no one coming. Whoever, if you don't have your kid, they're at the school and they're
Yeah.
not coming back. So just as I opened the door, this massive scream, just in chaos broke out, and I was like, holy crap. And the fire chief who passed away just a year or so ago now, he grabbed me and dragged me off and said, stay here with me for a minute. He knew enough. I've known this guy since I was a little kid. He kept me safe, warm and dry in his office for a few minutes. And then he goes, okay, where's your car? And it was in the front of the firehouse. I mean, literally against the base of the firehouse. And it was blocked in by the governor's cars. And he goes, let's try to get you out of here. And I went outside, and state trooper bodyguard or whatever, his Suburban is blocking my car. I'm like, dude, move your car. And he's like,
Yeah.
this is the governor's car. I said, I don't give a crap whose it is. Move your effing car.
Yeah.
And he did. He realized, he's dealing with a complete, lunatic at that point. And
Yeah.
I got in and I raced home through the woods. From there, from the firehouse to my house is literally like over the river and through the woods.
Yeah.
You no traffic lights, no street lights, a couple of farms, and that's about
Wow.
it. And I got home and I was, like you said, to coin a term, I didn't know whether shit or go blind.
Hmm.
Like did what I just did, was that for real or
Yeah.
whatever? And my girlfriend at the time called me. So what do you need? I said, I think I need something to eat. I hadn't eaten all day. Now it's,
Mhm.
8 o'clock at night or something. And so she brought me a salad but I didn't know. I literally, like you said, I was totally like my compass had broken off.
Mhm.
And you know, for the next couple of days, I I forced myself to go to a supermarket in Newtown, maybe 2 days later, and I was like so hyper aware of what was going on around me. I literally couldn't do it. I remember leaving my cart in the back of the store and said, "Yeah, this isn't going to work."
Yeah.
And I couldn't fall. I had a trouble sleeping for years before this. I would only sleep 2, 3 hours at a clip if I was lucky. Well, this set, like I said, broke my compass off. I could not sleep.
Hmm.
And when I tell you I didn't sleep for 28 days, I didn't sleep one iota for 28 days, but I didn't miss a day at work. I didn't, my life went on, but I honest to God didn't sleep for 28 days. And some of the law enforcement guys had said, well, why don't you go talk to, this counselor we're seeing? And it gave me, when people would say to you, oh my God, I heard what happened. Who are you talking to? And I would go, oh yeah, I'm going to, she punches my hand every week. But I never told her a thing. I couldn't be the deliverer of vicarious trauma to another
Yeah.
human being. Because if
Yeah.
if I really ever told somebody what we really saw, it would really mess you up.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
same with you.
Yeah.
Relatable story, right?
Yeah.
So
So many fronts.
yeah,
It's
so
crazy.
but she was kind of cool. And she was very spiritual, and she was hooked up to some of these large community churches. This is where I met this minister who had been in Rwanda. So, she was trying to find she was trying to do what she knew to be best, but she didn't really have any experience with these trauma victims or whatever you want to call us. But I met a couple interesting people along that path, and but we were very radioactive. No one asked us what was going on. They tried to have a debriefing with the three of us. They brought a guy up from down south, from the FBI, to try to debrief us, but it it got going, and maybe 10 minutes into it, it was too much for even him to deal with. And one of the
Yeah.
other doctors that was trying to help us, he got emotional. I said, "Stop this. We can't do this." So
Yeah.
it was the only failed debriefing I've ever been involved with. Whether I was a participant, not a facilitator, but it,
Yeah.
it fell apart. So no one could debrief us. So then, and you want to get into the resilience part of this, or the recovery?
Well, yeah, no, well, first of all, I mean, thank you for sharing your story of strength. Number one, I think listening to you tell that story, there were so many little relatable pieces that went to it. The SWAT, when I
Yeah.
was on scene, I didn't see anybody come in, and then all of a sudden, like SWAT just appeared, and they're forming, and I'm running around. Now I've got to run around this 8-man team or whatever it was, and I'm going around, and the guy grabs me and he goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going in. Where are you going?" And he goes, "We got orders. We're forming." I'm like, "Bullshit! F your orders. Follow me. I'll tell
Take
you
you
where you need
there.
to
Yeah.
go.
Right.
Let's go."
Yeah.
And but yeah, that moment when you said that, the the moment of where things kind of get disconnected, where you had that conversation real quick, like there's that instant escape with your mind on, okay, I got to break this up because I'm scared to death, and there's something that like hits, and there's almost this kind of relief just for a brief second, but it brings you back down into this human kind of element. Okay, all right, okay, now I'm focused again, let's go. um but the aftermath of I just get me the hell out of here. Mine was, when I went into that bathroom, and now today, still, if I go into a public restroom by myself, because we had, I was barreling doors open and finding women and men hiding. And this was 6.5 hours after the first shot had taken place. And, 20 people. In fact, one of our friends that was with us was in this group, and she screams my name and comes up and runs and gives me a hug. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm glad you're alive. But there's so many relatable, chaotic, crazy things that happen in that moment of stress. So it's I don't envy what you went through, of course, at all, but I've been there, and knowing and seeing what you saw with your eyes in a different perspective, I've seen that carnage. And so my heart goes out to you with that, because I know that's not easy. But you have your band of brothers that you were be able to go to in that safe haven and get your ass out of there. And
Oh
so
yeah, and
I
that's
want
the
to,
thing. You
yeah,
know,
go from there. Like
when for the couple of weeks, whatever, after the incident, the former fire chief was, where I worked. He they were very good, in the hospital where the two medics work, were very good at keeping everybody off of us.
yeah, that's
Everybody
cool.
knew we existed, but they couldn't get to us. I'd be at work, and a news crew would show up at the firehouse, and he would call me up, lock yourself in your room. And he would say, you got to get out of here. He's not here. He's not available, whatever. But they were very good at keeping the the press and everybody off of us. Um, but and then, like you said, you're trying to find the path. The map has changed, the paths have changed, but which one am I taking? And the guys at the firehouse and my public safety friends were very, very key. Um, I like I said, I didn't sleep for 28 days. I'm seeing this counselor who was, to be polite, completely ineffective, but it was give me somewhere to go once a week. Um, One of my friends rats me out to my physician, who's a friend of mine too, and we're also trauma buddies because he went through a real bad spell with his wife dying, and he calls me up as I'm leaving the counselor one day. He goes, "Dude, where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm in my car." He's like, "Go right to the uh, pharmacy and pick up a prescription I put in there for you because a little bird told me you're not sleeping." And I'm like, "Well, I don't ever sleep, David." He's like, "No, no, 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 no. I know this is different. You're going to go, or I'm sending your pals after you, and I'm having you admitted to the hospital." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So
Hmm.
I went, and he prescribed medication to try to put me to sleep. So meanwhile, I had a friend of mine staying with me. She was going through her issues. She was, sleeping on a couch downstairs, waiting for some things to get straightened out in her life. And she was like, "Yeah, take the medicine, and I'll stay and watch, make sure you're okay." I took the medicine for 2 nights, knocked me out. Didn't take it again. Reset
Yeah.
reset my
Wow.
system, and so it's you know some people need medication. Some people need it temporarily. Some people need it for maintenance, whatever. So it was another lesson learned that, okay, maybe there are different ways of dealing with things, you know. So going on from there, around May, this counselor informs me. Actually, let me back up a step. So, because you reminded me of this, so the relatable story. So
Mhm.
one of the differences with the Sandy Hook event, compared to most of the events, active shooting in the United States, is these are little kids,
Yeah.
5 and 6 year olds. So actually, the two parts of the story. So the first part is I'm in my office at my fire stations upstairs. I'm sequestered behind locked doors to get up to the second floor and so forth, and literally everybody's watching out for me. So one of the guys who's watching the desk calls upstairs, says, "Hey, Chief, there's somebody here to visit you." And I'm like, "Who's here to visit me?" And they're like, "Oh, he's a doctor from Maryland." And I'm like, "Oh my God, send him up." So it's Jeff Mitchell.
Mm.
He had come up and done some debriefing with the state police or whatever, and he walks in my office. "Hey, dude," and I'm like, "Hey, Jeffrey,"
Mm.
and he sat down, and there was a moment there where we got talking, and I kind of you know put the question out there, "What do I do?" And he said, which was profound. He said, "Listen, almost nobody in this hemisphere has seen what you guys saw." And I'm like, "Okay, here's the guy, the expert in the field of disaster psychology, telling me I've got no peers other than, half a dozen people that were with me."
Yeah.
Okay. So going
Wow.
forward, within the next couple of weeks, we get I had seen this other counselor finally, which we'll get into it for a second, but she says these people want to meet you, and I'm like, where are they from? And it's Duns Blaine, Scotland, where they had a very similar shooting to Sandy Hook.
Wow.
One, some of the few people that have seen what I saw in this hemisphere. I'm like, uh, okay, I'm up for meeting new people.
Yeah.
So we went out to dinner with these two. They were actually psychologists, like, from Scotland, and we talked. And again, relatable stories. They didn't have
Yeah.
as many as we had, but little kids,
Yeah.
tragic.
Yeah.
So that was profound. So then in the summertime, I spent a lot of my good weather stuff. One of my fun places, a racetrack up the road from me.
Hmm.
Beautiful place, Lime Rock Park. So I went up there in the middle of a rainstorm to watch some time trials, and one of the people up there is working security, works for the state's attorney's office, who I know. And he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Hey, how are you? Who were you seeing?" I said, "Oh, that's a funny story. She just retired. You know, I'm trying to find the path, but it, totally unacceptable." I'm like, "Well, I tried. It didn't work. What do I want to tell you?" So I go home that night and my phone rings, and I see the area code 202, which is Washington, D.C. So I'm like, this is going to be interesting. So I answer the phone. It's the woman who runs the EAP program for the Department of Justice. And I'm like, okay, I got ratted out again here. And she's
Yeah.
like, you're going to go get some help. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. No, she goes, this is a negotiation. I'm just telling you, this is what you're going to do. I'm like, okay. So she sent me a list of names, and like I do with everybody, I research to Google these people, and they all seem to be like family counselors, and this
Yeah.
sort of. And I'm like, that's not going to work. So I call her back, and I said, this isn't going to work. So she's like, well, what's important for you in a counselor? You got to see a counselor. Tell me what you want to do. I said, well, I probably relate better to a female, and they've got to have an insane sense of humor because I'm insane. So she's try the first one on the list. We know her. She's great. Her husband's a fireman. So I call up, I leave a message, June or July. She's away on vacation. Listen, my name's Bernie. I'm not going to take any bullshit from you. Blah, 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 blah. Call me. So she calls a couple of days later. Ooh, ooh, settle down. What the hell is your problem? So I go and meet with her, and I say, look, don't ask me to sign paperwork. Don't ask me permissions. Anything goes. You want to call my friends, call them. You want to, whatever you want to do, just do. Just don't bore me with the BS.
Yeah.
Well, we hit it off like crazy, and she's fantastic. She was part of the group that developed the people you were talking to, the Fairfield County Trauma Team,
Yeah.
um, and we hit it off on our journey. It took, I tried the EMDR, it made me car sick, so we used the tappers, and
Yeah.
you
Did
know,
you like the vibrating paddles, or would you like?
I think it probably works for a lot of people.
Yeah, it just
I
didn't work for you.
yeah, it didn't. The tappers maybe worked, but the lights, thought I was going to barf in a garbage can.
Yeah, I didn't like those.
Um, but so she took what I don't, she's going to watch this, I'm sure. What what she doesn't probably understand to this day is she gave me a lot of great advice, but she took me on the journey with her to go make other people trauma informed. So she had me speaking to social worker groups, and they have a monthly meeting for other people that recovery people. And we went and visited a couple of recovery centers. One was a really funny story. We went to one in Pennsylvania to check it out, and we just in my paranoid, and this is a couple years into it, uh, we drove all the way out there. I got a speeding ticket on the way from Pennsylvania State Police or New York
Thank
State
you.
Police. Yeah,
Thank you.
she's like, "Tell me who you are, my guy. Just write me a ticket. I
Yeah.
just write me a ticket." So we get all the way out there in eastern Pennsylvania and take the tour of this recovery center. It's beautiful, and we get back, and she's like, "Why are you so anxious?" I said, "No, I'm good." So we get back in a parking lot in Danbury where we picked her car up, and she goes, "Why are you so anxious?" And I opened my trunk, and she goes, "What is that?" I said, I packed a suitcase. I thought you were going to leave me there. And she's like, you are such an idiot. You don't think I would tell you that, if you were so messed up, I would leave you at a recovery center. So that was really funny. But,
That's
um,
funny.
and her and her group, as you met them, I mean, you saw that there was a room full of people, it was
Yeah.
150 people, I think came to that event we were at. Um, but they've done such great work because of these relatable stories. And we've had, they had a fire in Stanford where some kids were killed, and all sorts of other things, from 11, 12 years ago till now. And they've become the backbone to at least Western Connecticut's recovery. And then the law enforcement, after the Sandy Hook thing, I got picked up by the law enforcement people. It kind of was, I was always friends with the cops, but now I was kind of like in their fold. I never wanted to be a
Yeah.
cop. I don't want to be a cop. But there's a group in Connecticut called CABLE, Connecticut Alliance Benefiting Law Enforcement. They do a lot of training, and they adopted me and they invited me in to do their crisis intervention training, which is the de-escalation thing that cops do. Well, I was
Right.
the first fire guy to do it. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
And
that
then they
is
said,
cool.
and then
Yeah.
they said, why don't you take our peer helper program? 2 is a week long. I'm like, okay. And I had taken a law enforcement peer helper program like around 1989 from a guy somewhere out by you in Texas.
Hmm.
Um, and so I had an idea what that was about. So I sat with, I don't know, 40 cops or whatever, this peer helping class. And again, hey guys, I'm the fire guy. I'm not a cop. And we had a really good time. We learned a lot of stuff. I wound up teaching that program a couple times for them, parts of it. And since then, I got dragged back into the whole, stress responder thing, or what, I don't even know what you even call it anymore. The CISM, CISD, mental health care, peer support. And,
Yeah.
since then, I've done a number of public safety suicides, which is just a gigantic problem. We had another one just last week nearby here, a firefighter. Um,
Mhm.
so, you know, it, it and there's a complete difference now. People don't mind getting help, or they know they got to get help, or I I'm a very open, like I say, gregarious. I don't stop
Yeah.
talking. I meet a million people, but the thing that I kind of hold kind of cool is all of these exploits we've talked about, the debriefings and peer helping. I hide it in plain sight because I'll talk to everybody about everything, but they don't know that. Oh, well, last night I had to drive out to New London County and help somebody, but I don't file a report. I don't post it on Facebook, or those sort of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So when some of these people that I know for a long time are going to say he did 400 something. It was probably more like 500, but yeah, and I told my chief, my current chief, like a week ago, because we started a peer support team and all this stuff in my department. I said a week doesn't go by that I'm not asked for some kind of help. Yesterday, I got asked from across the state. I need a name of a counselor for myself. Okay, here you go. Um,
Yeah.
I get asked all that. Hey, can you talk to me? Sure. My phone my phone rings all night long. Don't care. I
Yeah.
don't care. You want to call me at 3 in the morning? I get up, and I instill that in these counselors I speak to, um, that uh, when one of these 911 emergency service people calls a mental health worker, that's a 911 emergency.
Yeah.
If a guy calls and says, hey, I'm Bernie, I'm a fireman, and I need some help, you need to call that person back on the next break that you have and say, I will see you tomorrow. And I piss a lot of these counselors off because, especially after the pandemic, their practices are full. And I'll call them up, and somebody will call me up. Hey, I need to speak to so and so, or I need a counselor. Call this one. They call that one. Oh, they told me that they can't see me for a couple months. I call back. You're going to see him tomorrow. You're going to stay an hour late. You're going to come in an hour early, but you have to see this person. It's a crisis. And most of the ones that you met get that, they don't turn people away typically, but it's, it has to be regarded as an emergency. And most of the time, if somebody calls me and they're really twisted up, and I don't mean that facetiously, they're having a bad day, I don't even I'll keep on the phone. Where are you? I'm in, I always use the word West Beliznia. Okay, meet me at the Friendlies in West Beliznia. I'm going to be there in about an hour. I'm driving a white car. Meet me in the parking lot, because I don't have the faith in talking to somebody on the phone if they're really in crisis. I might have to say, hey, you know what, dude? Well, let's go to the ER, or let's. I got a friend that's the retreat center or something, but we're way past that. We've had, where I work, we've had probably 6 critical incidents in the last month and a half, and the guys know, oh, this is bad. It was real bad, and let's just get back to the firehouse. My crew is, my platoon is, they're learning how to get their angles now. We had one a couple weeks ago, and they said, go buy an ice cream cake. So now we have ice cream cake debriefings or defusings. But
that's one thing that being around firefighters and law enforcement and military, and when I was in Fairfield County and doing that speech, I was in the back after I was done and got a chance to meet some of the firefighters that were in attendance there. And one of them, one gentleman said, listening to your speech and everything, it was great. He said, one thing that's different between firefighters and law enforcement is when there's a crazy call, a critical incident, something just crazy happens, we all are together and we go back to the firehouse, which is that sanctuary. And we all, whether we're going to eat dinner, our routine stays the same. But we all are able to be there together and somehow not make light of the situation, but internally process that as a unit, opposed to an officer that maybe has to process, not even be able to process, because it's one call to another call to another call.
You are right on target. Jeff Mitchell and all the people early on had determined, when they studied these people in the 80s, early 80s, 87% of emergency service workers experience critical incident stress. That's what they found in research. Since that time, I will submit to you, the other 13% are simply liars. They're just liars. Did you sleep every night of your career? Oh, well, no. Okay, boom. You're in a category. But what they found out was cops do miserable post-event, back then at least, because, as you pointed out very accurately, get in your patrol car, get back out there and go do your thing. EMS, also miserable. Teams of 2. Look, I know you just had, a baby die for SIDS or whatever, but there's an old lady waiting for dialysis. There's, you got to get back out there. We're chipping away at that a little bit. The fire service, completely different animal. And one of my advantages, I'm the boss, period, end of the story, when I'm at work. So we'll have a bad call. We had one, a couple of years, a year maybe after Sandy Hook, a very young child was murdered, and the crew did their thing, and I had my captain get them back here right now and take them offline and lock the friggin' doors and make sure they're warm, safe, and dry. I'm really good at making people warm, safe, and dry. I can't cure you. But I can make you warm, safe, and dry until we can catch up with ourselves. The fire service, you said, well, maybe they don't say things inappropriate. No, we do say a lot of inappropriate things. If the door's closed, and the guy's humor, but it's your way to
learn how to process it.
Exactly. But there's people in the room. I have a couple of guys on my platoon that are peer trained, and I'll have them come in, even if they're not involved. Hey, I just want to sit in the back of the room and just get the temperature of the room. And he'll call me up afterwards. They're good. Okay, cool. And everybody knows you can get help. You can call EAP. You can call Fairfield County Trauma. You can call whoever you want. You can talk to a peer. The state has a a law, a PTSD law, that if you are really affected, you get a year off with pay to get treatment. There are so many avenues for help, and you can pick whatever one you want. You want to call me? I can help you out, set you the
Yeah.
right direction. I know the path. Follow me. I'll take you down the path to where I know there's some help. But other people do other things. Some people like religion. Some people
Yeah.
may need a recovery center. Some people, we have peer-to-peer group meetings every week. They have help for substance abuse. So
Yeah, I've just seen it's really starting to grow in I hate to say like popularity, but it's becoming more accepted, especially,
completely
and I
accepted.
think firefighters within the first responder community are really leading that charge from what I'm seeing in California. Here in Texas, we're
Yeah.
doing great things with our departments are embracing mental health
Yep.
in a good way. I
Yeah.
mean, you guys are all still extremely tough,
The
like I
police,
talked
but
about.
even yeah,
But
but even like the police, again, I'm admitting my secrets here. Like I made sure all of our police where I work, their key fobs open all our firehouses. And we do miss the mark in some of these debriefings because there's a peer team for a law enforcement, there's a peer team for a fire service, peer team for EMS or whatever. But it doesn't really work unless everybody gets together that we're at the
that's
same
right.
incident.
Yeah.
So I'm a big, fan of getting everybody together. And, like guys will walk by my office and see a cop in my office that their fobs open our doors and all the way up to the second floor. And same with, we're probably the only fire department in the world that from captain on up, your fob opens the police station. So, we had a couple real tragedies at our police department in the last couple of years with officer suicides. And I don't even ask. I just go down there, go in and say, okay, where do you need me? We need to go
Yeah.
pick up a bunch of pizzas, or we can you get the dogs down here, the therapy dogs or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're all in this together, and it's I think we'll get there eventually. I mean, where I work, we're pretty close. We've got a great peer team with the police. We got peers in the fire department. We're trying to keep them on one team, but it's new, so people don't understand, um, the depth of some of these issues, and you have to have the EMS people there and the law enforcement people and the dispatchers and the fire guys. And we're doing way better. I mean,
Yeah.
is where I work is incredible because the people are all on the same team, but other places, we only debrief our troopers or our EMS people, and but Connecticut is way ahead of the curve. We've got embedded dogs, therapy. I met another one from Hartford the other night at an award ceremony, a Labrador. His job is to be a
Mm,
comfort dog. The state
that's awesome.
police, the Connecticut State Police, did incredible work in this realm. They have a thing called STOP, State Trooper Offering Peer Support. So they have peer troopers, and they they had confiscated some dogs that had been abused by some trainer, and some became law enforcement, like patrol dogs, and two of them became comfort dogs. We've got a lot of therapists, those people you met from New Canaan,
Yeah.
that were in New Canaan. Um, you know,
Which I'm
but
on their advisory board now,
right. I
by
mean,
the
it's
way.
great. I
It's
mean,
cool.
you made an
Yeah.
incredible impact that night. And to be perfectly honest, when I got there, I'm like, okay, who's, a baseball star? Okay, but you blew me away. You blew everybody in the room away, so I'm glad we're on board. I'm glad we talk every week or so,
Yeah.
and that it
Yeah.
just means so much,
Yeah.
the other night I was sitting on the couch. Oh, Todd's texting me. Cool.
Yeah.
And even with the time difference and everything. But
Yeah.
it's interesting, and I like what you're doing. I'll be my first show, first one
Yeah.
to thank you. Thank you for because you're doing this for us. And I'll be the first one to say this. You One of the things I learned too, which is what you're doing, is I learned it's Gandhi, right? You help people in the service of others. You help yourself, finding yourself in the service of others.
That's
So,
right.
it humbles us, when I meet you, I think you did tons more than I ever did in your
Oh,
event,
oh,
but it's relatable.
yeah,
And you have now, you're on a crusade, which is just totally cool. And you're talking to all these people, like you said to me the other night, people, everyone I talk to is sick, no matter where they are in the country, from the flu or COVID or whatever. So you like get
yeah,
your pulse of the whole damn country. But um, it's really cool that you're doing this, because we need more
thanks.
people like you. And I think as this program you're doing, I'm going in, expands, and you find out that it's not just Todd and Bernie, there's a shit ton of us out there now,
That's
which
right.
it's not, no one wants to belong to this club. You just don't.
Right.
Okay. But once you're in, you realize that you have a lot of peers, and what can we do to help others?
That's
I
right.
mean, I've been drawn to some of these events. There's they just had the one in Lewiston, Maine, and I
Mhm.
I called our coordinators here and said, hey, I can drop whatever I'm doing and go up there. And I've got a relatable story.
Yeah.
Um, but the problem is there's a lot of vultures that show up at these places that I can help. I'm this, I'm that, I'm a counselor. Well, we have some like really good counselors. You met them,
Yeah.
and they're for real. I would never, like, I talk to them. I vet them out personally. So, Todd comes to me and says, hey, Bernie, who you got for a counselor? I'll send you to this one. She's really cool. I know her. I've got her home phone number or cell phone. She sees baseball players that are traumatized. She's the
Yeah.
real deal. I wouldn't just say, well, just, pick up the yellow pages and look under, psychologists and pick one.
That's
You
a
can't do
huge
that.
thing. That's a huge
Yeah.
piece. And I know we're going to wrap up here, but that I want to touch on that real quick, because finding a relatable therapist, somebody that can actually listen to you beyond the 8 seconds or 3 seconds of craziness, like in your situation, in my situation, I couldn't speak to someone beyond 8 seconds of telling them because I didn't want to impact their life. But
Vicarious
now
trauma.
you're like that buffer, and others like you that are just amazing, where you're like, okay, hold on, no, I know you're going to be able to get past that 8 seconds, because that's going to help you in your therapy right off the bat. Start talking about it, because that's what you need to be able to tell that. And she's going to be able to relate to you because she's heard something similar, and she's going to be able to take that, or he, right? I always say she, because therapists, I think it's 93% of all therapists are women, where they're calling for more men to get into this
Right. Right.
space because we
But
need it too,
But they have to
So,
know, you have to
yeah,
know your audience. Like, we have a
yeah,
fantastic male one that was at our event, Michael
yeah,
Crouch. I'll throw him a bone
yeah.
here. They called him to debrief my guys a couple weeks ago, and I didn't think we really needed a debriefing, but they said, "Oh, we got Michael." I said, "Okay, 100% confidence. I don't even need to be involved. Michael will take care of this." And he said, they're good to go. Okay. So, but you also, once you start dealing with these trauma victims, of firefighters and cops and EMS people, like you pointed out, these people, we're on the front line where we're going in.
Yeah,
Um, you can't bullshit these people. So,
yeah,
and you have to take the gloves off when you're that counselor and say, hey, my counselor and I have had countless fights, literally fights, because I'll be Bernie and be stubborn and pigheaded, and she'll say you're wrong. And I'm like, I don't think I am. And then, you know what? F this. I'm out of here. I'm leaving. And she'll call later on. You calm down yet? Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Oh, really? You have to be able to stand up to these guys or people and say, I think you need to take a different look. And I am not afraid of anything. So when a guy calls me, a girl calls me and says, hey, I need some help, but I don't really, no, and I talk to them, you're really messed up, dude. You need to talk to so and so. Yeah, I don't think I get in a car. I'll drive you to their office, sit in a lobby or my car, go through the hardest part is walking through that door.
that's right.
And,
Yeah.
and once you go through the door, like, hey, so that idiot sitting in the car in the parking lot? Yeah. Okay. So it, I tell every single one I send to therapy, the hardest part is walking through the door. Just
Yeah,
take a deep breath, take your soda with you, walk through the door.
yeah,
And it's from that point forward, it's all downhill. It's relaxing,
I
you know.
always say, keep your boots moving forward. Just keep
That's
them
good advice.
moving. And you know what? At some point, you have to be able to say, okay, I'm going in. It's the whole reason of this. I'm going into therapy. I'm going to listen. I'm going into that car. I'm going to do something to better myself, which is going to end up being able to better those around me.
Well,
So
you just make
that's
a great
good.
point, which is your show here. These people that have to go, that should go to therapy or whatever, go get some help. They did the hardest part already. They went in
Yeah.
to your event, to my event, to these other events. They went in. No one could prepare you for what you did, but you went in. So, okay. So walking through the door of some nondescript office somewhere and talking to a therapist who's probably pretty cool,
Yeah.
that's nothing. It's literally nothing. What you have insurance, talk to the person, you don't like her, go to the next one, walk out, find a new one. But chances are, if they're trauma informed and they're one of these trauma recovery people, you're going to be okay. Why didn't I do this 10 years ago, 15
Yeah.
years ago, an hour
Yeah.
ago, whatever? But you make a great point. The no, you've got one of the most unbelievable stories that I've ever heard of from a civilian. But that was the bravest thing. You had no choice. You did what you had to do. So
Yeah.
going to a therapist, come on, that's not even a discussion.
Yeah. Well, you got, as long as you get past that, I'm going to fight it. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to suppress it. But at that point, you're just kicked down so bad. Okay, what do I got to do? All right, let's go. And you're right. Walking in the first step and sitting down the first time is like, all right. And the minute you start to talk, okay, all right, I can do this.
I was
So
such an asshole the
yeah,
first time I went to my current therapist because I literally went in there loaded for bear. You're not doing this, but you can do that. And she's looking like, oh, okay, you done yet? Okay, yeah, I'm done. And because her husband's just, he's a fireman like me, and so she knew the species, and then
the
she waited.
species.
I let my piece be known, and then she said, okay, you ready to listen for a bit? And she taught me the most important thing of this whole process. I carry two buckets. One's got the bad shit in it, so you're usually like this. Well,
Mhm.
keep filling up the good bucket. So go help an old lady cross the street. Go bake a pie,
Yeah,
or
be
go
kind.
be
Yeah,
kind, whatever the case may be, and fill that good bucket up so they level off somewhat.
yeah.
That simple. Somebody broke my train of thought and gave me something profound to just say, do some good things. Wow.
Man, Deputy Fire Chief Bertie Meehan. I'm so glad you were number one, my first guest, but
I'm very
I
honored to
learned
be.
so much about you, and I didn't, obviously we really kind of just gotten to know each other, but brother for life, man. And
Absolutely.
you're just a true inspiration, and I'm just so blessed to have gotten to know you. I can't wait. I think, man, if I were a firefighter, I want to be in your house. So it's pretty cool. Thank you for being on I'm Going In. I know you got to run in real life. Here we go. So good luck to you. I'm here anytime, and thanks for being on the show, buddy.
Oh, thank you for having me.